Hello and welcome to PSA's Let's Squawk About It. Today we are pleased to welcome Amy to Plate Church with the Center for Food Integrity to discuss what CFI does along with some of the biggest questions consumers have when it comes to the poultry industry. Amy, welcome. Please start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do with CFI.
Yeah, certainly, Sam. And thanks so much for having me. I've had a pleasure of working with the Poultry Science Association and really respect all the good work that's done to continue to innovate and better understand animals and how they behave and how we can have the best food sources and best welfare and sustainability. But back to the Center for Food Integrity is an organization that was established more than 15 years ago, always with the same mission, which is to help build trust in the food system. So we know that consumers have had an increasing number of questions and curiosity about where their food comes from, how it's produced. And so the Center for Food Integrity, or CFI for short, works to help connect those dots between those that are producing food, farmers and agriculture companies, and those that are marketing, selling, processing, and then ultimately buying and consuming food. So we have more than 150 members and project partners of CFI, and that ranges from primary producers, farmer organizations, retailers, restaurants, branded food companies, and research institutions and land-grant universities.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and like you mentioned, you have a lot of consumers asking questions about their food and wanting to know things about like where their food comes from and things behind their food. So when we talk about the poultry industry, welfare is a big topic. What are some of the biggest questions you see consumers asking when it comes to welfare in the poultry industry?
Yeah, I think that there are different questions coming from different consumers.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important to understand in this conversation. We tend to think of consumers as one group, all consumers, but there's really many different segments. And ultimately, not to just a slight diversion from your question about welfare, but ultimately, still in food choices, many consumers will look first to value, price, quality, and convenience and taste are still some real drivers in
Mhm.
the food purchase, and that goes across from meat, eggs, dairy, and all other food types. But there is an increasing segment of consumers that, as we mentioned, that really want to understand how the food is produced, how the birds were raised. And so, generally speaking, they want to know that they're treated humanely, that they're treated with respect, that they're living a good life. And so all of those words are really hard to define. And it's kind
Mhm.
of like beauty is in the eye of the
Yep.
beholder, right? So that's really our challenge. Words like humanely, proper welfare are open to one's interpretation. What they've seen online, what they've the opinions they've formed through their experience, what they've heard from others. So that's part of the challenge we have in communication. But most commonly, to directly answer your question, most commonly we are hearing questions about space and housing for poultry, and quite a bit of that is likely fueled from all the conversations, the transitions, especially in eggs and for laying hens, around cage-free or conventional or other types of housing. And when you think about housing, there's just quite a bit of confusion. Again, how does that translate to the labels on the egg cartons? And is cage free? Of course, we know that all broilers are and turkeys are in a cage free open environment in the U.S. But I think that cage free housing conversation probably has a blurry line and blurry interpretation for many consumers.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It is it is a big question out there, and like you mentioned, there are different consumers within the consumer segment. So we have consumers that are concerned about welfare, and we have other consumers that are concerned about other things, such as sustainability, which is my next question, as far as like what consumers are asking with regards to sustainability. How are we, protecting our planet with the food that we're producing?
Yeah, sustainable. I hope I'll probably sound kind of like a beating the same drum here. And sustainability is one of those other tricky words, right? Because it means different. Sustainability means different things to different people. Generally, we and many people that we work with think of sustainability as kind of leaving a place better than it was when we found it, or having an environment that is sustainable into the future. So we have not done a damage that it cannot be enjoyed by future generations. So sustainability really today means more than the environment. So it started out as kind of thinking like being green and in how we're caring for the environment. But today's sustainability has a broader meaning to include not only the environment, but also food safety, food quality, conversations like traceability, worker well-being, and that emphasis on the employees that are on our farms in processing plants. And that really kind of increased, elevated like with the COVID pandemic and other circumstances that kind of put a spotlight on food production and food availability. But regardless of how you define sustainability, one thing is really consistent is that sustainability and understanding the values that companies operate under, that is more and more important for younger generations. So especially millennials and Gen Z are very curious about land use, water use, other preservation of natural resources, that worker well-being, as I mentioned. And those younger generations are more likely to make purchase decisions based on a company or a brand's sustainability promise.
Right. Absolutely. And, we just celebrated Thanksgiving. We're getting ready for the holiday season, and poultry is on a lot of folks' tables this time of year. So when folks are looking at making these purchases, they probably have a lot of other questions outside of sustainability and welfare. But what are some of the hot topics you see being asked of the poultry industry when it comes to CFIA's work with all of this?
Yeah, I think that, antibiotics do continue to be a conversation point. And I think this is one, and how does antibiotic use on farm connect with antibiotic resistance and residues. So that's a complicated conversation. And it also ties into animal welfare as well, right? So when my children are, feeling ill or have an infection, certainly I want to help them feel better. And sometimes antibiotics are an appropriate solution, and so, helping connect the dots between different aspects of animal care is really important. But ultimately with all of these questions for consumers, it all comes down to trust. So whether it's meat or eggs or other foods or even the clothing that we wear, buyers today are asking, can I trust the companies that are producing and marketing food? Are they doing that in a way that aligns with my values? Do I believe that they're doing what's right? So consumers just want to know. They want assurances that the companies producing their food are doing it for the right reasons. And that's become more difficult as food producers as we look at how the scale has grown over the years. So our farms today look bigger, for biosecurity reasons. We have more buildings and we have, signs that say, keep out. And we know that that's for animal health and biosecurity and protecting the birds. But the consumer driving down the street or down the road doesn't understand. They see it as we have something to hide, And so processing plants are larger and have more employees than ever. And so there's just this general bias against larger size and scale. And that's part of our challenge. But the good news is that we also understand how we can cut through that big is bad bias. And a big part of cutting through that is to increase our transparency, to really literally open the barn doors. And, today that's more easier than ever through technologies, just like we're using, with kind of cameras and videos and social medias, and really showing very transparently, this is what we do on our farms. This is what we do in plants. This is why. So I think that opening the virtual barn doors and being more transparent and really focusing on why we do what we do. I think it's also important, Sam, for your audience to know, because I'm guessing many of your listeners are scientists or involved in research, and the voice of the scientists, animal scientists, environmental scientists, engineers, the voice of the scientist is really, really important in consumer conversations, because consumers want to hear from independent, credentialed experts in terms of what's really best for the birds, what's best for the environment, and they do trust scientists and researchers, especially those coming from kind of independent third-party research institutions. So I think it's a great place for PSA and for your members to be kind of transparently talking about why we do what we're doing and how we're always working to make it better.
Absolutely. And that's why we have this platform through Let's Squawk About It to talk about these things and highlight that research and the work that is being done so that this can be disseminated to people that have those questions. So awesome. Great stuff. Amy, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the Center for Food Integrity, some of the stuff you guys do and these burning questions you get from the poultry industry. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to do it and happy to chat through it anytime.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.